and/or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and/or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles! Psychics! Everything's ungodly! Dark's at it!
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian!
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark-sided stuff!
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm your host, TruthSeekah. This is the TruthSeekah podcast. I'm excited and delighted to be with you guys again for another amazing episode. We're going to jump right into it. I want to say a huge thank you to everybody who is holding us down in the chat, listening live. I see your comments there. Shout out to everybody on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, no matter where you're listening, man. Shout out to you guys. And also to the people listening on the podcasting apps. My heart is with you all. And so if anybody has any questions or comments, make sure that you type those in the chat. And towards the end of the stream, I will relay those questions over to today's guest. We're gonna go deep. It's gonna be really good. I've been listening to a lot of her work, a lot of her interviews and her lectures, and some really interesting stuff that you guys are going to enjoy. We are a listener-supported, listener-funded show, so thank you guys so much for believing in the work, and everybody who is partnered with me via Patreon to bring more of these exciting episodes. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for believing in the work and co-creating with me. Within the last week or so, some of the new people who signed up via Patreon, I want to give a shout out to Jen Makita, my friend. Thank you for coming on. Gavin McDonald, thank you as well. Josiah Valerius and Phyllis Smith. If you'd like to join and support, go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. The link is in the description. There you get access to my entire discography of music, 200 plus songs. All of the new stuff that I'm recording, working on for the next album is already available there. You can check that out as well. You also get access to the Thursday night School of the Mystics. And so I get a lot of people reaching out to me wanting to speak and ask questions in one-on-one time and even pick my brain and those kind of things. Thursday nights is where to do it. We have open dialogue, open discussion, prayer, meditation, all that good stuff. So make sure that you head on over to my Patreon page and check out what we got going on there. We'd love to have you on the School of the Mystic Thursday night stream. So make sure you check that out. And we've been having a good time over at the Mystic Circle as well. We've been doing monthly webinars and there's nightly sessions with other people there. And just want to announce that we have on July the 22nd, my friend Anna Dotia, which was the lady who came on the other day when we did the numerology episode, which was amazing. So she's going to be doing the next webinar for July, and it's going to be amazing. Like, those numbers are accurate. Numbers don't lie. 2 + 2 will always equal 4. So it was a really good session, and so she's going to be over there with us. So make sure you guys check that out at themysticcircle.net as well. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome my guest today, my friend Betty Kovacs. Betty, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, my friend. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Excited to have you. Someone posted in a group the other day asking about the Rosicrucians, and the first thing I saw was a bunch of like disinfo, scary stuff. Stay away, stay away, this kind of stuff. So I was like, let me get refreshed up. Let me do my homework, because I know these comments I'm reading aren't true. So started watching some YouTube videos and ran across your work, ran across an interview that you did, and was really well put together. And you're very knowledgeable about that order and that subject. So I wanted to pick your brain about that. And then we'll get into some other stuff that you bring to the table that's amazing as well. So it's going to be really exciting episode. For those who don't know who you are, they're new to your work as well. Just kind of give a brief overview, who you are, what you bring to the table. We'll start there.
Okay. Well, I taught college for many years. And so I was working with young people during the 60s, which is a time really kind of similar to this one, with a kind of awakening to a mystical tradition. And we, of course, studied mythology, symbolic language, and that is the spiritual traditions, really, of other people. And near the end of that, my son was killed in an automobile accident. My mother had been killed in a car accident 1 year before. And then 2 years after that, my husband was also killed in a car accident. So in all the years that I talked about death and looked at other people's understanding of it, this really was a deep opening to the mystical tradition in my own experience and the other dimensions of reality. So I wrote my first book, The Miracle of Death, There's Nothing But Life, out of that. And since I had taught these ancient traditions, then I retired and I started doing a lot of research. 16 years actually of research before I finally wrote The Merchants of Light. Well, I was writing it during the time too, and the consciousness that is changing the world. And so this is what I've been focused on for most of my life, is there has to be more than what our culture tells us, that very limited Western worldview that there's nothing but matter, and there's no meaning and no purpose. And when you're dead, you're dead. We're all just a fluke, an accident. That's probably the most destructive worldview anyone could ever come up with or ever did come up with. So I would just sum it up by saying my life has been a truth seeker beyond, what I was given.
Yes. Yeah, and it's a task. It's a beautiful journey, the truth seeking calling, and to study the spirit world, how it works, how it operates, this life and the next, and where the two meet, which is a beautiful song and dance, I believe, and a beautiful discussion. And so many people have touched on that, and we'll explore that a little bit more too, the concerns and worries and the fear of death and those kind of things. And we'll touch on that a little bit later. Let's start off with the Rosicrucians. Again, this order, and I can just throw you some comments out there of what people were saying, that they were Satanists, they were devil worshippers. You hear all of these strange, even though there's a lot of biblical iconography, I've even heard that their symbolism even maybe come from mystical traditions of Christianity. And there's a lot of fear with an order that what I've studied have seemed to be so beautiful and so pure in its endeavors and intentions. Can you talk a little bit about who the Rosicrucians are and what they aren't?
Yes, and that's startling to me that people would say things like that.
Yeah.
But so much is said without a real history of reality, I think, and that perhaps out of fear too. There is a modern Rosicrucianism, which I don't know that much about, although I did have a former student. I had a student who was in that, and it's very deeply spiritual and mystical and Gnostic. But I'll go back to the historical Rosicrucians, and which emerged around 1600, and they were scientists and mystics, visionaries and scholars, and they really have their roots deep in that tradition, that scientist, mystical tradition in Western culture, stemming really from from the cave cultures and the depths of the sand people in Africa, and then the continuation with old European culture and Egyptian culture and the first temple mystical shamanic tradition of Judaism and on. So they emerge around 1600. Well, when they do emerge, it's just out of the Italian Renaissance and the High Middle Ages Renaissance. So they are deeply connected to the deepest spiritual and scientific and mystical traditions in the West.
What do you think? Well, let's see. What religious affiliation, if any, coming from a scientific expression, but we know that those kind of were coupled or married together early on, before the church really, said that everything was spiritual and you couldn't look into these other realms, which were more physical, I would say, which is coming back. I want to get into that as well. But were these Christian mystics? Were these Jewish mystics? Were these pagans who were a part of this order? What type of people were led and drawn to a fraternity like that?
I think that you've said it all, that our deepest spiritual traditions at the core are the same. When you go to the depth of one true, authentic tradition, which is the mystical inner Gnostic tradition, you will find the same universe. Of course, you'll find that we are all born into, out of this universal mind or cosmic consciousness. So they were in the 1600s. So, of course, Christianity was dominant in Europe at that time. But when we look at the underground traditions, and they were only underground because the church forced them underground, they could not exist on the surface. So there were, for instance, the Egyptian mysteries of death and rebirth and Hermeticism. And then there were the Judaic First Temple tradition that were mystics. And then there were later the alchemists and Gnostics and so on. All of these people who had had their own deep inner experience knew precisely that at the heart of every religion was that same loving, creative heart consciousness. But, so we'd have to say, the Rosicrucians were Christians, and they really, but they also had, I'd say they really came into being in old Prague, which was under Rudolf. He was a Catholic, but he allowed all of these underground traditions that had been suppressed by the church. He allowed that activity in Prague, which was the old Bohemia. So here we have all of these Hermeticism, various forms of Gnosticism, Judaism linked to the First Temple tradition, all of these traditions. And that's the beauty of it, individual traditions. They were able to meet in Prague and actually share and learn from each other. But basically the culture was Christian. And they really wanted to support Protestantism because the Protestants allowed a little bit more freedom. Rudolf was an exception, although he was Catholic. He was interested in it all and allowed it all. They knew when Rudolf died, though, they were going to have some kind of power to keep that freedom, simply so all of them could work together. And as I said, they were also scientists, not only mystics, and they were engineers, they were mathematicians. In fact, they developed the mathematical approach to nature, which later Western science inherited.
Nature seemed to be big to the Rosicrucians, and definitely for the early people. And I want to say that a lot of things that you're saying, I feel like there's a renaissance of this. There's a renaissance of come together, let us reason, let us bring the beautiful things of our faith, let us bring the beautiful things that have served us and worked for us, and cling to them. And it's from many different traditions, and we're able to see these ley lines that kind of correlate and cross throughout the religions. And those are the beautiful things, the love, we are all one, and some of these timeless truths that are echoed throughout every religion, which is something that I'm celebrating right now, that a lot of people are stepping into. But when it comes to nature, I want to ask you about the symbol, because the symbol for the Rosicrucians, at least the main one that we see, is some type of cross and a rose in the middle. And I've heard different things about the cross that has something to do with mankind, and then the rose or the flower would be divinity. Others would say that the rose stood for the rose of Sharon, which is a analogy for Jesus in the Old Testament. What are your thoughts on the symbol for the Rosicrucians?
Yes, I think within the Rosicrucians, it was very clear that the cross, of course, is bringing together all forms of opposites. And it would be nature and mankind, humankind coming together. But the rose at the center is what unites and brings all opposites together. And that rose is of the heart and heart consciousness and the frequency of heart love in the universe. That love is what always brings us together and celebrates our differences, but sees the creativity of it and how it all blends into one whole unity, the wholeness. So the rose is heart consciousness, loving heart consciousness that brings all opposites together. It's really a beautiful symbol.
Oh yeah, great. And just like I mentioned, this renaissance that I'm seeing in many mystical traditions, and there's a branch of Christian mystics that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, where they're holding on to the beautiful sides of the Christian tradition, but they're kicking a lot of stuff out the door. They're kicking hell out the door. They're kicking division. They're kicking that this is the only way. So much stuff, and it's amazing, this renaissance of Christian mysticism, where it opens up doors for people like me to come in and bring in different things that I believe were a part of the Christian faith from the beginning, or trance state. I want to talk about that. But are you seeing this renaissance as well? Is it something where you're getting more opportunities to speak, and people from different walks of life and background are coming together to share these experiences?
Yes, and you make me so happy to hear you say that, because in the book, I talk about how these ancient traditions, shaman mystic traditions, were suppressed and repressed, or sometimes just the vicissitudes of history wiped them out for a while. But basically, it was the Roman Church that suppressed them. But in the book, I say that these underground traditions survived, but they emerged in 5 different Renaissance periods. One was the High Middle Ages, the second, the Italian Renaissance, the third, the Rosicrucian Renaissance that we're talking about, and the fourth was the German and English Romantic writers. They really did pick up this Rosicrucian tradition as pietism and so on. And then today, as I say in the book, the 5th wave is today. And people like you, that's why I said in the 60s, that was beginning of the awakening, and then it was kind of pushed down, and it appeared to die out, but it didn't. In fact, I'm so delighted that all of this knowledge about our ancient shaman mystic past, different scholars actually brought that up in the 20th century. We didn't really know that we had this strong, deep, spiritual shaman mystic tradition until the last century. So yes, I see this time right now, and we certainly need it, because we're facing the darkness that has emerged from all of the suppression of who we really are.
Yeah.
And for instance, I'm so delighted to be here with you, because you are clearly a part of that renaissance. And other people that I've talked with, other podcasters, it's like the 60s again. I mean, those students were so exciting, because we sort of discovered these things together. I was young at that time, and the students were as interested as I was, and they were finding things, I was finding things, and it was a real renaissance. All of this from the early stages of our human development in the West, all of this is within us. It's within our beingness, and it's rising to the surface now. Yes, it can be an incredibly creative. It is a creative time.
That's amazing. I'm with you, and it's so beautiful. Let me ask you this. So you mentioned modern day Rosicrucians may not be the same thing as the ancient early orders, which I don't know, a tradition that has stood the sands of the test of time, and it's still the same thing today. We got something very different than it started out as, and that just kind of happens, and it's formed into an order or a religion, and over time that happens. But with this awakening, right, people are looking into, they want to join the order of the Rosicrucians. They're looking for an ancient esoteric order, a mystery school, if you will, because we read, the works of Blavatsky or Manly P. Hall, or people read my work and they're like, I want to get into a group of people who are studying, who are actually doing this stuff and fellowship. And so they go to the Rosicrucians, or they hear about the Masons, and the Masons are the protectors of this ancient knowledge and ancient wisdom. But if you go to just any Masonic lodge, you're probably not getting what you're looking for. You're going to get into an order that's just, they have good things, but as far as studying the mysteries and that kind of thing, what do you think any of that's preserved in the Rosicrucians or the Masons, or how do we move forward in finding our tribe of people who are like-minded and want to go deep, who are studied and have given their life to the mysteries?
Yes, that's a very good question. And but I would like to say, first and foremost, that the ancient tradition that is so vital still today is in mystic Christianity. And now with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, here were mystics there who, when the first temple mystic tradition was destroyed, and there was the exile and then the second temple, these mystics did not go along with the second temple because they weren't carrying that ancient tradition. So they moved out to the Dead Sea, and they had a library there, much of which was found after World War II. And then Christianity later had texts that were also Christian mystical texts, which had to be buried. They were buried in Egypt because the church made it very clear they would destroy them. So in those texts, we find a living Jesus and a mystical Jesus. And when we look at these texts, which we've now found, Nag Hammadi texts were also found right after the war, and we look at this with all of the Apocrypha and then the canon, we could begin to see a much bigger picture. And what we do see is that early Christianity was a shaman mystical tradition. And we are told that there is a hidden tradition which Jesus taught, a hidden tradition. Now, that was suppressed by the church, but obviously, as you know, it's continued underground and is growing. So I think that if one is born into that tradition, it would be good to know those things. Jesus in the Nag Hammadi text said, when you drink from my mouth, you and I are one. And if you bring forth what is within you, it will heal you. But if you do not bring forth what is within you, it will destroy you. And I think we see in the world today that there is so much destruction that is happening, and it is a result of not bringing forth what is within us. But the real question is, where do we find like-minded people that we can work with? Yeah. And I don't know that much about the Rosicrucians today or the Masons. What I had that same question as a young person, and I didn't know where to go either. I didn't know where could I find someone, and I couldn't. And so I couldn't, and I didn't. But I think that, this tradition says that when you ask the question, when you want to know, then you have entered the labyrinth. And when you enter the labyrinth, you're on your path, and everything that happens to you is a learning situation, a growing, evolving situation. And you keep going around and around and around. Sometimes you think, I'm experiencing the same things. What am I doing? Repeating. But we're always learning on a different level until we do get to the center. And at the center, a wonderful classical scholar, Karl Kadeny, said, when we get to the center, we confront the divine, the cosmic mind, not as other, but as self. Now, I think that once we ask that question, the old saying, when the student is ready, the master will appear, it might be that the master will appear within and not in the outer world. I think it will be each person will find that place that works for that person. And I think that it's interesting. I was so excited to hear that you knew Manly Hall, when I before I even came to Los Angeles, I had read about him in all places, Henry Miller, who talks so much about him. And I used to go to his lectures on Sunday morning. It's absolutely amazing man.
Yeah.
And he had brought all of this together, and it just his photographic mind. And so, I found, as we all, as you have, found these places that helps us, nourishes us. And of course, for me, that I went actually to Peru twice to study with shamans. And I did learn things, but I've discovered when I was there that I no longer could have that outer guide. I remember on the island of the sun, we went to this little tiny cave, and we were like, an individual only could be in it. It's like curled up like a fetus. And I told myself, you have had guides, and I'm grateful to all of them, but now I ask for the guide within me. I have to have that. But I think it's different for everybody, but we will find it. Yeah. We will find it. Each of us do find it.
It's like once you find it, then you're able to identify the teacher in other people, right?
Yes.
There's a similarity, and I think that's the mystic path. Again, these different traditions who are able to come together and salute, because that light in me honors the light in you, that I can see it. And we are similar in our endeavors. We are similar in our pursuits and our love. And even though the names in symbology and the allegory may change, the pursuit behind it is the same. And I think, which is near and dear to my heart, mystical Christianity, this is what's being taught. In the book of James, it talks about that you don't need any man to teach you, but the Holy Spirit, which is the Spirit of truth, will lead you and guide you into all truth. And then now, was that to say that we're not to learn from people? No, but we recognize when the Creator is speaking through other individuals and has illuminated them, and we can honor that and see that. That's a revelatory experience for a lot of people, because we're told that God is only here or God is only there. But then we read these texts that God is within you and outside of you, and the kingdom is all around you. You just haven't been able to see it. And that's a pretty mind-blowing experience for a lot of people when they come to, no matter what faith that they're a part of.
Well, this is precisely the secret teaching of all the mysteries, is that we don't need to look outside ourselves. I think it's wonderful when we do see each other, and we can intensify that flame within ourselves. Yes. When we meet. That's so important. But what has been lost in the Western tradition is that precisely that the master is within you, and that the Christ is within you. And that's what the Jesus of the Nag Hammadi text, or the hidden tradition, was also saying, go within. And yes, he developed, and others have always developed, different techniques and ways to try to ignite that knowing. But this is what was left out. The church did not allow that. One who went within, the Gnostic, was considered a heretic. So the Western tradition lost that most precious path to who we are under the Roman Church. And it still lingers that, in shamanism, there's no doctrine. It's you go within and you learn from yourself within, your own soul, your own heart, the master within you. The heart and center of the labyrinth is also called the master of light, or the mistress of light. It's all in us. And that's the mystery that so many of us have forgotten. And if we go in, we will find the connection without. We find each other. That light will guide us to each other.
Yeah. You create neural pathways and connections that you're able to start seeing. And I talk about the things that are done in, I'm just echoing Jesus, the things that are done in secret are made manifest when you open your eyes, right? That inner contemplation, that shamanic journey that you travel and you go away, or you hide away within your prayer chamber, as Jesus talked about, going to pray and commune with the Spirit. But then when you open your eyes and you're out and about, you're seeing things literally in a different light. You're able to perceive that, and that's so beautiful, and something that we all have access to, not just the priest. Jesus says that you are all now made priest. All of you. You don't have to go to the priest. You are a high priest now. To really understand what that means, that you are divine, that you have access that was limited or only for us or us for no more. And so it's very empowering to understand that.
It is, as I said, it is the heart of the mysteries, is that we have everything within us to teach us everything we need to know.
So true, so good. We have a question here from a super chat on YouTube from Gavin McDonald, and he wants to know, what is the Veritas vortex from a Rosicrucian perspective? If you're familiar with that. I'm
not sure.
Okay.
The Veritas cortex, it's or vortex. Well, it sounds like, I'm not really sure what he means, but if it means what is the central, the heart of what emerges, then I think that is what we've been talking about, that the very heart of our beingness is the master. We are all divine. And this is one thing Christianity the Roman Church robbed us of, is that the masters of the past, all of these mystics and shamans, wanted us to know three important things. We are divine. Everything in the universe is divine. And we are immortal. There is no death of consciousness. Consciousness creates the universe, and it is still present when the material world is gone. And we are creative. We need to claim our own power, our own divine power as creators, but only out of the heart of love. So any center of any spiritual vortex would be that.
That's good. That's it. I'm with you. That's the love that fuels our faith and our compassion for the mysteries. And now you can find people who were in this and they got all the right words and they say all the right things and it can blow you away with some of this ancient mystical knowledge, but there's no love in it. Have you ran into that? I see it all the time. But have you ran into that with different teachers and scholars and people who are speaking from the head rather than the heart? There should be a connection there, but there are those people.
Well, that's wonderful you say that. There should be a connection, because our ancestors knew that unless we're connected to the heart, we can't really be creative. And we now know that all of the brain components are connected to the heart. The heart is a brain component.
Yeah.
And what has happened tragically in Western culture is that we could only develop the rational mind. So we have that one brain component that we've developed. It's severed from the symbolic mind, which actually feeds it. It develops first in us and it feeds the rational brain. But we've severed ourselves from that. And we've also severed ourselves from the heart. So we have a very disfigured worldview and culture. And so it's very easy for people to get carried away with just the rational. And even though they're talking about the heart, they're severed from it. And it can cause tremendous harm. And even when you think about it, that distorted development is what we praise in the university. You know, the intellectualism. We're not looking for heart connection. This is what's really missing in our education. You know, the ancient Egyptian mysteries made it so clear that if we don't develop feeling, culture cannot unfold. It's feeling. You can't even understand certain thoughts unless we can feel those thoughts.
So good. The comments that are coming through, people are saying this talk is so rich. They're really enjoying the information that's coming through. Thank you so much. I want to let everybody know, everybody watching this live with us right now, let's do a quick experiment. I seen this yesterday. Make sure you guys click the like button, click the thumbs up button. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching, go ahead and make sure you click the thumbs up. And what will happen is that YouTube will send this out to more people who need to see this. This is a beautiful conversation. And so just busting through any religious or traditional lines to open up and make room for the spirit. That's what it's about, tearing down any walls. That was the ministry of Jesus, you know, embodied, to go to and speak to the Pharisees and the Sadducees and show them the things that they were even overlooking. It was there under their nose, the entire time. So guys, make sure that you click that thumbs up button. We have 25, 26 people watching on YouTube and more over on the other streams as well. Click thumbs up and let's see if we can get some more people in here. On one of your lectures about the Merchants of Light, you mentioned a name that I just found out about. One of my students and one of my friends mentioned somebody who has done a personal session with this individual, and convinced me to buy a book from him, which is a beautiful book. I thought I had it right here, but somebody by the name of Bradford Keeney, who you mentioned of in your work, that I'm enthralled. He's very close to me. I want to get over there and see him, but this heartbeat of the spirit and how it moves and how we can kind of tap into it through song and through dance and through chanting. And again, my heart goes to the church, the tambourines and the dancings and the spinning and how we're working up that spirit. What does Bradford Keeney's work mean to you, and what was expressed to you through his work?
Well, first of all, he knows so much about the San people in South Africa. And I had read about the San through someone else who had lived in South Africa. And he just paints a picture of them that is so joyful and full of wisdom. And the West, of course, did not know this about the San people. But you probably heard the story that that he tells, Bradford Keeney tells in his book, that he was playing music, and it was through this music that this universal consciousness opened up in his heart, and it was so profound. But he didn't have anyone to talk with about it either, and he didn't know quite what to do about it. He went to the university, he got his degree. I think he went to MIT and Purdue, and while he was at university teaching, he was invited to South Africa. And then 2 weeks, I think, about before he left, he had a dream, and it showed a map exactly of where he was to go and whom he was to meet. So when he got to South Africa, he got the team, and they went. And as he was, and the dream showed him the map exactly where he was to go. And as he was crossing the desert, some of the San people were running toward him, and they were saying, "Welcome home. We have been waiting for you." So Bradford gave us all a gift, and that is a deep insight into these amazing people who they say have been around 65,000 years, maybe more. Anthropologists, archaeologists put them at about 33,000. They have all of this art throughout South Africa, the etchings in stone of their spiritual journeys. So what was so important to me about Bradford Keeney and his wife Hillary's book is that deep insight into their ability to trigger, they know how, in meditation, which is done different from India, to go into and experience cosmic consciousness. And the West had no idea, because they couldn't perceive reality to see who these San people were, but they know how to live in a joyful, happy way. And when Bradford told them, in India, people meditate, they sit alone and meditate to go into that. And they were, oh no, they couldn't imagine being alone.
Being quiet.
Because, and dance and the music and, the little bells on their ankles but they know how to do this, and they do it communally. And they also can help others awaken to that. And this sounds very strange. Something that Bradford talks about makes so much sense, is that they actually could manipulate that energy into little arrows and then throw it at someone.
Wow.
And that kind of ignites it. Now, it can be painful because that's a very powerful, intense energy, but it helps to awaken others. And, there's the tradition of Shaktaput in India that the guru hits you with a ostrich feather or touches your third eye, whatever. And someone said to me, well, the San knew the ultimate Shaktaput, by throwing these arrows. And I think they might have known that in the cave cultures too, because you see people that have arrows in them kind of floating. I don't know, but it looks like that probably existed there too. So the Keeneys really brought a knowledge of this beautiful people who knew how to experience who we are and how to enjoy life and see the beauty in nature. They really followed the laws of nature, which We have not. And if we don't follow the laws of nature and our own nature, we destroy the world, as we are trying to do. And they knew that. So I'm very grateful for their work. And I'm so glad that you bought it and that you heard it. And I think that they've done some incredible work.
Yeah, we've watched some of his videos on here of them over, I believe it was in parts of Africa, but they went to a couple different places. And it's amazing how there's this idea of an ecstatic experience and how it could be transferred or over the internet or watching a video, if that's your intention. I was talking about like watching these videos, and there's two things that happen. You can either judge it and say, oh, that's weird, or you can watch it maybe for information or to criticize it. But that's one path you can take. The other path is, I want that. I want to go deeper into that, and so to experience it. And literally, we did a retreat just maybe 3 months ago, and his work was some of the focal points, because one of my students had learned under him, and we're like, we're going to do that.
Oh, wow.
We're going to cook, is what he calls it, cooking the spirit.
Let
right?
it boil up.
Yeah, and so it's the rocking, the shaking, the praying, and all of that kind of stuff, and see what happens. And one of the things that sounds familiar, of like a marriage between that, of an order of sorts, that I really can't vouch for everything that any of these people do, really, but the Shakers and Quakers, right? When you read about some of their traditions, there was this really ecstatic, exuberant dance and praise and spinning and dancing, and they kind of build that spirit up, and that's still kept in many different traditions today. But there's also the really solemn prayer, getting quiet, getting by yourself. So it would marry the two, the dance and the exuberant praise, with a quiet, more solemn worship. And when my personal experience of seeing that really took it to another level, of coming from a charismatic Christianity background, is what I come from, but to know that there's power that's worked up in that, right? There's a lot of stuff, but that same power can be transferred in the midst of prayer, meditation, and being quiet. And it's amazing when you figure that out.
Yes. Well, and among white people and Protestants and Catholics too, but there is that inability to move, has been that inability to move the body because there's not.
We don't have rhythm.
Exactly. And I grew up in that. Dancing was forbidden in the culture when I grew up. Thank heavens my parents were not solidified in that culture, but the body didn't move. And to dance with music was forbidden. And you think, my goodness, what happened to them? So I think that it's been several cultural changes that has helped the person to move. And I remember seeing in South Africa the movement of the bodies, whatever it was, the body was moving. It seemed like every muscle was moving. Yeah. And when I was in Peru, and we were mainly out in the country, but when we did go to a restaurant and there was a Peruvian, music and singing, and I could see some of the people who were there as tourist white people, they couldn't move their bodies. I mean, they wanted to, but they didn't know how to do it. Yeah. So I think that our Protestant and Catholic culture has neglected, it's rejected the body. Even the Jesus of ancient tradition, they cannot accept his deep spiritual, physical relationship with Mary Magdalena, because it somehow reduces his value if he knew how to relate to the feminine. But, the Nag Hammadi texts make it very clear. He relates to all forms of the feminine. And at Chartres, which is the very epitome of Christ consciousness being born, coming into being the higher self, we see this this marriage of Mary and Jesus. So it's I think that we're bringing back the body, is my point, I think. To bring back the feminine is to bring back nature and soul and the body, the beauty of how spirit has manifested itself in the human body, and how we can love each other through the body. The children are born through the body, to honor that. But I absolutely agree with you. We can experience this silently, And we also can experience it in a new way for most of Western culture, through that boiling of the spirit, as the Sands say, until it boils out of the top of your head. And then you are with the spirit world, in the spirit. You know who you are.
Yeah, that's awesome. Talking about some of these different meditations and things that you've mentioned, and a lot of people are doing, because you're talking about living from the heart, right? Living from the heart up, I've heard it called, the heart chakra up. Living from a place of love. Are there any meditations or things that you believe in that we could do to help us live from the heart? That focus on the heart, expanding the love frequency from the heart, or anything like that? Have you been taken place or anything like that?
Yeah, I think the frequency from the heart is very strong. The heart gives more frequencies to the brain than the brain gives to the heart. But I'd like to mention Heart Math. People can go to that organization, heartmath.com. They have done scientific studies on the power of heart consciousness, and they encourage a meditation exercise of imagining you're breathing from the heart. You take in the universe, you take in the heart consciousness of the universe and see it flowing into your heart and flooding through the entire brain, all of the brain components back into the heart. And sometimes if you just touch the heart, it helps you to keep the focus there. But allow yourself to feel everything that comes into your brain. Allow yourself, what do you feel like in your heart? And then just keep breathing through the heart. And then you can ask a question to the heart. Ask a question that you'd like answered, and it will come. It might not come right then, but later that will be so clear to you, the answer to that question.
Yeah.
And so that's a very simple exercise, but it does work because it's focusing on where the center of our consciousness is, which is the heart. And if we allow that energy to flow through the heart, then it can flow through the reptilian brain, through all of the mammalian brain and the prefrontal lobes back into the heart. When a culture wants to dominate us, what they do is make us afraid, make everything very fearful. And then the energy in the brain goes back to the reptilian brain, and we can't think clearly, and it's not flowing through the heart. So it's always, we have to think, when a culture tries to make us think we're involved in some horrible situation that only they have the solution for, we need to go to the heart and allow that energy to flow forward through the mammalian brain's prefrontal lobes into the heart. So just to keep that focus, that's a major meditation. And I try to do that, and to remember to let my brain do that. Mm-hmm. And then there is another, which I think was probably an ancient exercise, is that the megalithic cultures, of which Egypt was one, but all of those megalithic monuments around the world that actually knew the equinoxes, the solstices, and so on, these were master builders. And the legend is that these people, they knew the cosmos and the earth because they were initiates into the mysteries of death and rebirth. And so they saw the human being as a mediator. And so I think in a meditation, if we can see ourselves as a mediator and allow the energies of the earth, imagine that earth and those energies flowing all the way through us out of the crown chakra and going up to the net of light. I talk about the net of light in my book, Merchants of Light. I had many mystical experiences with that, as have others all over the world now, that there is, and even science now knows there's a net of light, and there are these centers all the way around the earth. And if we focus on the center that's just above us in the net of light and feel that light flowing down through cosmos, through us and into the earth, and then we find it meeting in the heart. This, I think, is a very powerful ancient ritual, which most of them are simple. But when I really need to be grounded and I want to connect with that light energy from the cosmos in me, in my heart, and allow it to also, what we're doing is honoring the earth energies that are so powerful and creative, and the energies of the cosmos. And when they meet in the heart, that opens us.
That's good. Speaking of that, right? This higher energy that we're able to access, we're able to bring in and through a lot of different means, just by simply focusing on it, which is beautiful. I'm reminded of the early churches that would have steeples on top of them, and I believe these steeples were like an obelisk, if you will, that is to channel and bring in that heavenly,
precisely,
higher energy to the congregation or to the people. I mean, the ancient churches were built in such a way where sound, music, frequency, and energy was all throughout those cathedrals, with the music and the harps and the organs and everything that they played to facilitate a spiritual experience.
Absolutely. I mean, every temple wasn't just a building built somewhere. Everything in it was built to ignite spirit in the individual. And that's so beautiful that you mentioned that. It's like the church, these ancient cathedrals, who were evidently built by these master builders that we don't know anything about, is that they're rooted deeply in the earth, and they're absorbing the earth energies. I mean, it's a very powerful earth energy place. And the steeples, yes, it's the exercise I was just talking about. It's the energies of the earth coming up into the temple, bringing down through the spheres this cosmic net light energy into the heart of the cathedral, which is into the heart of the individual. And everything in it vibrates, or is made to vibrate, so that we have an experience within ourselves in that place. Yeah, that's beautiful that you said it so well. It's wonderful to know that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And there's some beautiful research in being a part of that. And some other people are kind of capturing some of it with Alex Gray's work and things like that. He just built Cosm and that and structuring this whole, and even in Italy you have Damanhur underground, this like psychedelic ancient underground temple that is immaculate, beautiful psychedelic paintings of fairies and gnomes and angels and other realms. And when you step into that, you are stepping into a physical spiritual experience, if you will. And everything's mirrored, and that's something that you talk about as well, like us mirroring stuff. Or I'm big on, symbolism and a logo, that's something that you can look at that would remind you of a spiritual experience. And I've been writing about this idea that once we stay out of the spirit realm for so long, that we start getting infatuated with monuments and with an outer representation of something spiritual. But those things can very much be a portal back to a remembrance of this spiritual experience, right? Some type of statue, if you will, a monolith, a painting, a picture that we look at, and we're drawn back into the presence of that person, if you will. Can you talk a little bit about symbols and the power that they carry?
Well, we have a symbolic brain. One of the brain components is that area of the brain that has its own language. Our first language is symbolic language, and that the symbol connects us to spirit. And this was understood in the 1700s by Jean-Baptiste Vico, who's one of the first theorists of language. And he said, our first language is symbolic language, and it feeds into, that's the right brain, and it feeds into the left brain. And out of this feeding in from the symbolic brain, we have conceptual mind, logic. But he said, what we've done in the West, of course, we've just developed the conceptual and we just pushed away. That's insignificant, the symbolic. But he was saying, if the mind wants to experience its own wholeness, there must be an integrative and dynamic continuum of movement between the symbol and the idea, And once when I was teaching, I had a dream that I went to a foreign country whose language I didn't know. But I was teaching them their first language, their native language. And of course, I knew that was symbolic language. And yes, we have to pay attention to our own symbolic mind and allow ourselves meditatively to know what those symbols are communicating to us within its context. Again, we can't, people outside saying, oh, this particular object always means that. No, it's dynamic and creative within us. And I would say that if we think of this continuum of movement, we must include the heart. That this then flows through the heart. But it's the symbol opens us. As you were saying, you can contemplate something and it's as though you're there. And the archaeologist Maria Gimbutas, who discovered old Europe, here was a completely different symbolic system from the West. When the Roman Church came in, it abolished this rich symbolic symbol of nature and the cosmos, and it had very few symbols. And if you didn't honor those symbols, you were a heretic. And she told me that when she would sometimes have one of those artifacts, perhaps an image of the feminine pregnant with life, she said, I could feel that in my hand. But she said, of course, I could never say that among the archaeologists. So we have to always protect ourselves, because the academic world, while it comes up with some brilliant things, it's usually the last to accept reality in its wholeness. And so she struggled, and now they're really, I don't think they're even teaching her in school, but she was the most famous Bronze Age archaeologist. And when she discovered old Europe, it was a completely other world where soul and nature and the inner life were honored. And of course, the patriarchal world didn't know how to accept that. But I think that focusing on these images can awaken that energy and frequency within ourselves.
That's so awesome. We have a question here from Sassy and Fras wants to know, have you studied the runes at all?
I know of them. I don't in any way set myself up as knowing much. And they're a beautiful symbolic system. Yes, and I work with the runes sometimes. I think these symbolic systems like numbers and different types of animal symbology and runes. The runes are an ancient symbolic system born out of this natural experience of life as a mystery. So yes, I think they're very valuable.
Awesome, great, thank you. So we mentioned this kind of divorce, if you will, between science and spirituality. I feel like there is a reunion between the two, looking at the work of maybe Joe Dispenza, looking at, there's a lot of people who are kind of showing the brain and heart coherence, and even people like, I have to say their name, Kirby Delanoral, these people who are showing you the science of spirituality, which, as they were at odds, they seem to be complementing one another as we're tapping into the neuroscience and teaching you how to, how these miracles work within your own life, of how your belief works and how faith, and if you speak something, and the neuroscience behind it. And there's so much more with the works of these individuals. Would you say that there is even a renaissance of the science and spiritual coming back together?
When there's a renaissance of spirit, there's always has to be a renaissance of science. And when there's a renaissance of true science, it's always connected to spirit. The rather tragic thing was that out of the Rosicrucian work and movement, when they really tried to get enough power to maintain openness enough so they could continue their work, they were destroyed. They were destroyed by the church. Their texts were destroyed. And after that, there was a 30 years war between the Protestants and Catholics in Europe. And when the Royal Society for Science emerged later in 1660, these scientists who had been a part of the Rosicrucian movement, who had wanted to make clear to the world that if you have a deep spiritual experience, the most natural thing in the world is to understand it scientifically. We understand it spiritually, we need to understand it scientifically. They are the same. Like ancient temples during the megalithic period, they were never, was it an observatory or temple? It was both. It was always merged. But when the church destroyed these scientists, and they continued to exist when the Royal Society opened, and they called themselves the Invisible College, because what they wanted to do is bring enlightenment of a scientific, intellectual nature and of a deep spiritual, mystical nature to the whole world. The Rosicrucian period was the root, the deep root of the true enlightenment. And in the 1700s, when what we call the Enlightenment came, it was totally severed from spirit. And the church made it clear that those scientists in the Royal Society could not do anything with consciousness or the inner world. So it's strange irony that it was the church that actually brought about the material world view, that there's nothing but matter, because those scientists could study nothing but matter. And later they forgot that they had their roots were in the mystical realm. And so out of that suppression by the church, we developed a scientific, but very limited scientific view that there's nothing but matter. Now, in the Renaissance that you're talking about, science has come full circle, and in quantum physics, and many quantum physics are saying, that consciousness creates the universe. We don't need to fear death. Consciousness existed before the physical universe. We create it every day, every moment, every thought. And the Kogi, I talk about those in Merchants of Light too, still in existence, trying so hard to keep the balance in the high Sierra Mountains, isolated from the conquest by Europe, because they knew they couldn't survive with them. And they've tried to keep the balance, but they have said our thought, well, everything we think every moment creates the scaffolding for matter. We are creating matter every moment. So everything we think is what it expresses itself in matter. And they say that we are dumbing the world down, that they can hardly hold the balance anymore. So they have given out, finally made contact with us to tell us, we don't understand all of the Earth's systems and its natural laws and so on. So even they, having been hidden for 500 years, they are now coming forward and they are shamans of the high order of shamanism they have in their culture. So I think all of this is awakening today, and we have to awaken to the darkness that we have allowed, I don't want to say created, constructed, allowed to take place because of all of this suppression in Europe. It's breeded an arrogance and a kind of superiority of rationality and everything else that we touch. It's very, very dangerous. And now these same people are talking about artificial intelligence and transhumanism when they don't know. They have no idea what the human being is capable of, but they have to go inward for that. So I think you have put it so beautifully. It is a renaissance, and it is always, the true renaissance is always fused, the spirit and science always fused. It's just a different way of expressing the universe and our place in it.
Awesome. That's so beautifully said. Thank you so much. Death is an interesting one. It's I talk to a lot of people on here who have the loss of a loved one, and then something happens, whether they talk to a medium and they find out that their loved one is still visiting them and still around them, and sending messages, and you hear a lot of different stuff, but it sparks this journey or search for the afterlife and what happens when we cross over. I feel like you're mentioning all of these ancient traditions and first peoples and all of the orders that started from the beginning, and even what we have today and what religion does. I feel like a lot of it's mankind trying to make sense of death, what happens when we pass. And you have so many different things that people say, whether it's religious or spiritual, if you will, and a lot of those lines cross and actually intersect, and people have had near-death experiences and coming to grips with death, and we find different ways to do that. One of the biggest ways that I think the majority of people, maybe Americans, is just not to think about it, right? When other cultures embraced it and remembered it, but it's like, I'm going to be like this forever. This is me. And so there's this way of thinking that you're never going to die as far as this incarnation in this body. I mean, it's even one of the things that is getting popular in the Christian mystic circles is actually from the East through different branches of Hinduism with the light body and those kind of things, is
Yes.
to transform your body into light so that you can maintain this physical vessel forever. And there's this notion of like, I'm never going to die. I'm going to be like this forever. I feel like a lot of that kind of stuff gets into escapism. What has been your studies on death and at least that transition from this form to another, that maybe that light that is within us that breaks out of this cocoon, if you will, and is able to go on to a different experience?
Well, that is the very core of my life, is that when our son was killed in a car accident, my husband, who hadn't been interested so much in this kind of thing, but he had a vision of his death before it happened. When I looked back, I realized for 2 years I had been dreaming, but I looked at it symbolically of his death. He himself at 12 had a dream of his death, of being in a trauma center and then crossing to the other side. And then in the last year of his death, it was almost like a practice run of going out into the cosmos and coming back, out into the cosmos and coming back. And then finally realizing that physical body was not his, and then he could go. But we, both my husband and I, experienced his consciousness. It was it was the next day after his memorial that we began to experience his presence in a deep and profound way. And it's interesting because the vision that my husband had 2 weeks before he was killed, our son was killed, is that he saw Pishti, our son's car, at the side of the freeway, and his body superimposed on it. And then he felt himself say, "Oh, that's right, Pishti. It's almost time for you to do this." And that so startled him. But then Pishti said to him, "That's right, Dad. I'll be out of the house for a little while." Well, he didn't know what that meant until after his memorial. We did experience him. He wanted us to know he's still alive, he's creating, he was very much alive. And he wanted us to know that, remember that. It wasn't like he said, remember that. Like we all know that within us, that we are immortal. But then he talked about this difficult period that the earth is going through. It is a renaissance, but it is also giving us the ability to deal with the darkness that we have allowed to be in the world and destroy so many people and so many places. And so he said he wanted us to remember that that's why we had been born, and I think many of us have been born in this period for that reason. So I had always feared death before because my mother's, her mother died young. Both parents had been orphans, and I feared that would happen. And in this experience with Pishti and actually opening to this cosmic consciousness, I knew once you experience it, you don't need to worry about death. The body may die, but we are in the source of our existence, the cosmic mind, and we will create a new body if we want to be reborn. And I think there's definite reincarnation. I mean, we experience that over and over again. So now, what about trying to maintain this body, creating a light body? I know less about that, but I would think that if we create with cosmic consciousness, if we remember we are all born into this universal mind of who we are, that I think that we can do all kinds of things. There are stories of people who've lived for generations and generations discreetly, to do the work. I think one time my husband had the vision of sitting on a hill with Pishti and looking out over the ocean where the sky touched it. There's no limit. And Pishti said to him, "Dad, do you see that horizon? Even that is not the limit." And at that time, I was still too much a part of the left brain. And I kept thinking of every limit I could imagine. I mean, the limits just come into my mind. I don't do that anymore. I know that whatever it is you're talking about, there is no limit to what we can do. We simply need to be open to it. There's even that. The limitless is not a limit.
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, the teacher said, Jesus says that you can do, you know, whatever you believe, you can do. Anything that you can believe for, that you can achieve it. Nothing is impossible. And who's to say what your nothing is? And that's a big one. We have to kind of keep room for that for us. Oh yeah, all things are possible except that.
That was me. And I saw that in myself. It was boom, 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 every limit jumping up. I have released myself from that. And that is such a freedom. But yes, I think that we're even learning in science that it's not so much our genetics, but it's what we believe. Can we actually allow that thought to exist? And if so, it's possible. So I just think we're learning so much about ourselves, you know, but you know, we have so many fears. I think the fear of a different way of life, a fear of someone looking different from the way we look, a fear of someone thinking different. You know, these prejudices are fear-based.
Yes.
They're fear-based. If we can let go of those things, I mean, how wonderful it is that we're all creating in different ways, you know? And what if everybody looked like one person? It would be so boring. We couldn't stand it.
That's what people want. I don't know why.
And they couldn't live with it. But I think that is fear of creativity. Prejudice is the absence of creativity and the fear of it, I think.
Yeah. I welcome it. I champion it. I get to see it, you know, and there's so much beauty. There's power in it. When different people with differences, you know, that are noted, we put our differences aside to come together for a common good. And that's for that's to love, that's to learn, that's for friendship, camaraderie, regardless of religious tradition or spiritual tradition. We're seeing a lot more of that again, this Renaissance, I believe, stepping into allowing people to coexist, to live together. Even in the scriptures, there's references where it says, like, if it be possible, live peaceably with all men, you know. And some of these truths, hold on, we've ignored these teachings that have been there the whole time. It says, speak evil of no man, when you guys are speaking evil of everybody who's not like you, right? So some of these elementary principles that we're learning to transcend, and how liberating it is.
It is. And I think all my life I wanted to meet different people from me because I wanted to know their differences. I want to know, how did they think? And, you know, I went to work in Europe, and I have to say, I met my husband, who was a refugee from Hungary. He'd been in the revolution, had come to the United States and been drafted into the American army. So he was in Germany. And I met him, but he was for me what I needed to cure me of my limitations, I would say. It's like, it was that feeling that anything is possible. And dance. He could dance all night and all day. But it was this kind of craziness to me at that time. But it was that joy of life and love. And he didn't care what anybody thought. Well, sometimes I wish he had, you know, I'd be with him. But he was healing for me.
Yeah.
And I needed that coming from this stiff culture that didn't know how to sink into life and simply be. And I have to give him credit for helping me do that.
That's so awesome.
And the dancing, I realized if you dance, I didn't feel the same way again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, I'm not the best dancer, but when the spirit moves you, or you're dancing with a purpose, you know, there's a scripture, the King David danced and his clothes came off, and he just began to dance before the Creator, and he didn't care, you know, he you know, the things that he would do, you know, but they definitely believed in the dance and the movement, and that's coming back.
And the ecstasy, the ecstasy that I think
ecstatic
that
dance.
Ecstatic, and I think that we, just as Jesus said in the Nag Hammadi text, if we don't live this, it will destroy us.
Yes.
And I think that what we realize is that if we know how to allow the mind to experience ecstasy, that is that aspect of its own beingness, if we don't allow that, we're going to have this kind of culture that's prejudiced and violent and addictive. But if you experience the ecstasy of all life, those things just fall away.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, say what? I mean, how could it matter, you know?
Yeah.
Because ecstasy heals us.
Yeah. part of that, I think, is being able to see the good in the things, that are different, or
Exactly.
even if you feel like it's bad, train your mind to find the good in it. Because there's all of these things that come up, and the first thing that comes up is the negative. Again, I mentioned, the Rosicrucians and someone in a chat, and all these people are unloading, and it seems strange to you, right? But I'm sure you've heard the same about, Manly P. Hall, somebody whose work is like really near and dear to my heart. Someone else who's been a little bit more triggering for myself and for a lot of people, and probably rightfully so, Madame Blavatsky.
Yes.
Maybe Manly P. Hall, people open up a little bit, but a lot of people, the first thing they go to is, okay, Manly P. Hall was a Luciferian, be careful.
Oh my God, really?
Oh yeah, that's a big thing. I've got these books on him teaching on the mystical Christ, and it's so beautiful. And and the same thing with Blavatsky, they'll take a quote on her reference of who Satan is, the God of this world, and things like that. And people take these things out of context and demonize their entire catalog of works. And it was said that Blavatsky was giving people writings that were over 6 feet tall of her works, and you would demonize and discount everything that she brought to the table because of something that you disagreed with or it shocked you, when if you read those texts in context, they tend to make a lot more sense than we thought. And that's just so weird when we can say, okay, yeah, Rosicrucians are this, Christians are this, Blavatsky was a Satanist, stay away. It was hold on, this woman has some amazing work, and we wouldn't know Western spirituality at all if it wasn't for the work that she did, and how she brought a lot of Eastern mysticism here to even just open up that conversation to honor her, and Manly P. Hall even. And so there's a new respect that I have for her. I've always had it for Manly P. Hall, but
absolutely,
it's an amazing conversation.
That whole business of evil and devil and Satan, it began with the Roman Church. And in order to suppress anyone who would have a different kind of experience. But Jesus did not teach this business of Satan and the devil in the Nag Hammadi text. I mean, it's like it's not really in the world. We have the potential not to bring forth what is within us and allow ourselves to destroy the world.
Yeah.
And we can certainly call that evil, but that's in our choice. It's not at all like that there is a devil somewhere and Satan. Now, there are people who have a lot of different notions about that, but I think the most important thing is, how do we heal ourselves? How do we heal the soul? And that would mean, how do I allow that truly creative, loving energy in me to develop? Then I don't have to worry about evil. I mean, I do in the sense of how do I protect myself from some of the things. But if we learn how to love and develop and evolve, we will learn how to deal with the negative that is in the world. And then once we can heal our soul, we think of our culture and then our planet. But I just can't understand the talking about that.
Well, it's easy.
When they don't read them, they don't know.
Exactly. 100%. They've only read those quotes that someone shared in a meme or a quote, or somebody who's trying to
dangerous.
demonize or put them down. There's a big thing as well, like in the Christian movement, to talk about the Kundalini and the Eastern tradition, and even that's a warning. Stay away from the Kundalini. My research says what is happening in these charismatic churches, and as under the name of the Holy Spirit, and these ecstatic encounters that they're experiencing in the East were happening thousands of years before they came to your small church, and they are. To me, it is the same thing. It brings about the same manifestation. There's crying, there's blissful, there's transformation, there's spiritual awakening, there is letting go of your past mistakes and sins and failures. You're being born again. And these people are experiencing the same things.
Yes, and it's interesting that so many Christians don't really realize that in the heart of ancient Judaism, the shaman mystic Judaism, and in the traditions before, for instance, in Sumer, is that the serpent, which in the, let me just say, the original story of the tree of life is that the serpent twined up the tree, that is the rising of the Kundalini energy. And the feminine is the tree, life, consciousness that gives the fruit of the tree to anyone who is ready for it. And in giving that fruit, the serpent is allowed to rise up to the crown chakra. They knew that. Now, when the Deuteronomists came in and destroyed the ancient shaman mystic Judaic tradition, they changed the story. This is not the true story that we get in Deuteronomy about you shall not eat of the fruit, and the serpent is evil, and Adam and Eve were evil. And this is all a making up, an inversion of the true story so that it is made evil. So people today talk about that. No, the original story is, yes, they honored the Kundalini energy, which was the serpent, rising to the top of the tree. And the feminine, nature herself, is saying, eat, take of the fruit. It was never forbidden. And if you eat the fruit, you know you are immortal, you know you're divine, and you begin to co-create with the universe. This has been so distorted, and that is the birthplace of all of this demonology and evil and Satan and everything that's something they don't know about. You know, it's going to be evil. And it's a shame because those same people could experience such a fuller, vaster life. And that's why it's so important to know, what are our true stories? Our true stories are always born out of the organizing principles of our own soul. They're not made up like the Deuteronomists did with this you should be punished business with the tree. That's a made up story. It's not a true myth.
Yeah, I wonder what I'm thinking of now is this almost like this inner versus outer wisdom. You know, that even the notion of, you know, where did it go wrong? The idea of a tree is something outside of you that you have to grasp for when all of that is already within you, right? And it seems like that's where we do fall into pitfalls in this intellectual knowledge, tree of knowledge versus the tree of life. And the serpent, obviously, from the beginning, like that's the only time it almost seems like it's something negative within, you know, the serpent is a symbol of wisdom. Jesus says, be wise as the serpent is. Study the serpent. Do you see how wise and cunning he is? You need to be like that, but be as harmless as a dove. And then we look at Moses holding up the staff with the serpent upon it, and everybody who gazed upon that serpent on the staff was healed. So in iconography, the serpent was something beautiful, was something that was a symbol of wisdom. Even seeing the Egyptian headdresses and the third eye with the serpent coming out, this one who is awakened to this ancient spiritual knowledge of who they really are.
They were awakened. And this, when you were talking about inner and outer, our ancestors knew that symbolic stories, symbolic language was not about the outer. They knew that symbolism was our spiritual language. And even in the Nag Hammadi texts, some of the disciples speak of symbolism as our first language. And symbolism is the language of spirit. Spirit always speaks in symbols. So when they see a story about the tree, it's not something outside them. They realize it is the psyche that is telling them, this is what happens within you. You are the tree of life. We are rooted in the earth, reaching to the heavens, and the spiritual energy can rise up like the serpent. And the fruit is our participating in cosmic consciousness, Christ consciousness. Yes, it's such a much more positive, true, you would say, life meaning.
Yeah, I think so as well. Betty, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me. I've really enjoyed this, and the chat is lit up and everybody's loving this conversation. Thank you so much for hanging out. Let people know
thank you.
Where they can go to follow your work, to get your books. People are asking if you have a live stream. I know you produce a lot of videos and a lot of interviews and some of your lectures and things like that, which are amazing that you have online. But where can people go to find out more about you and keep up with your work?
They can go to the website, which is kamlak.com, Kamlak, comlock.com. There are videos there. And then there are other interviews I've done. They can just go to YouTube and put in my name, and they will get several different types of interviews. And the books can also be purchased: The Merchants of Light, The Consciousness That Is Changing the World, and The Miracle of Death. There's Nothing But Life. They can also be purchased at Comlock or any place that sells books and ebooks.
Awesome. Betty, thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
I
know
did
we can
too.
keep going. Anytime you want to come back on, I'm glad we was able to do it so soon too. Thank you so much for
I'm so
hanging out
grateful
with
to
me.
you. Thank you so much.
All right, my friend. Enjoy your day. Many blessings.
You too. And let me know if you do see Bradford Keeney, okay?
Oh, I emailed them. They're on a sabbatical right now. I actually want to go interview them in person because he's in New Orleans and I'm in Mobile, and it's
he's
2
in New
hours away.
Orleans now.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought he was in Phoenix.
Mhm.
But he's in
New
I would
Orleans.
love to see that. So yes, I want to know about that.
Yeah, I have an idea to do a documentary on and call it Spirit or Energy and talk about the energy from all traditions. I want to interview
Oh, I love
him
that.
and shamans, healers, Christians, Hindus. I want to talk to everybody about that oneness, that thing that I refer to as the Holy Spirit or Kundalini. It's the same thing, and so I want to put out a documentary and definitely want to talk to him about it. It'd be beautiful to have him on.
Well, yes.
So
It would be, and in the ancient Hebrew tradition, it was in the Holy of Holies where the priests went and joined in the sacred marriage with spirit. So there was always that energy that you talk about. But I love that. I love the idea of really seeing it as energy. And what are these different energies?
Yep.
Well, you were just doing amazing work. I'm so impressed with you, and I just wish you all of the best. And I want to keep in touch with what you're doing, so I will see that documentary.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll have this conversation again because the chat seems to really love you. So thank you so much. I've enjoyed our
grateful.
time as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Betty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Betty Kovacs, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, that was a good talk. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So good. Covered so much and such a beautiful spirit, such a wonderful conversation. And again, I'm watching the chat here as we're talking, and people are asking questions and conversating with one another, chats within the chats. I love it, man. This is something that I'm excited to see because it's something that we've had really engaging chats in the back, back probably a year and a half, 2 years ago or something, where the chat was lit up and people were getting alerted for the podcast and it was coming in ready to talk and see one another. And over the years, people come and go, and it's so awesome to see people in the chat. So if you're watching this on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are, go ahead and say hello. If you have any questions, let me know there in the chat too. I'd love to answer them or give my take or opinion on different things as well. While we got a few more minutes left here on the podcast. Here is one from Kimberly who says, I'd like to hear from TruthSeekah about the current groups of mystic Christians who are as open as he is to truths that can heal us. Listen, that is a great question. And I will say, everyone's different. So don't think that people would vouch or agree with everyone's work, or at least all of it. They have things that may come up as a concern, but there are some people that I feel confident about saying their name, and I really enjoy that. There's a spirit of camaraderie behind saying their names, and one of them's in chat with us now. Has been commenting the whole time. I got to give a shout out to him. The Flying Penguins, Martin Smith, is a Christian mystic. I would call a Christian mystic who is very inclusive and very much moving in the area of love and acceptance, and love what he's bringing to the table. So Martin Smith with the Flying Penguins, you can Google that. He's been on my podcast once or twice, and good friend. So let me just think of some of the names that I can name, and I hate to do this because I hate to leave someone off, right? But the people that come to mind, we got to talk about John Crowder. We got to mention his name, Daniel Oskopinski, a good friend of mine, called him a Christian mystic. And I'm thinking of some of the lesser known ones as well. Someone that I had on here, Saint Anthony, who was on the I Am track with me, who is Anthony I can't think of his last name. It's spelled Kenyotis, Anthony Kenyotis. Had him on here, but he's a beautiful brother. Love what he's doing. Let's see. Dr. O is a beautiful Christian mystic. Kirby Delanero, I mentioned him. There's so many people. Let's see. Christopher Carter, I gotta say his name. Some would say Ian Clayton. Big fans of his work. Let's see. Gil Hodges and Adina with Kingdom Talks. What they're doing. There's so many people, but those are some of the ones who really stand out to me. There's a bunch, and most people who are affiliated with us, I would say. So in and out of us, you learn about other people, different names, like you heard about Bradford Keeney today. I would say he started out as a minister and a Christian, but he doesn't really hold to that tradition these days. And so what you have to do is be able to identify that light or identify that truth in other people, in other philosophies, if you will, to get another take on maybe the things that you believe but are practiced or taught because they have been studied from a different perspective. And that's a huge one. So many of these Christian mystics, again, there'll be things that maybe you would vouch for, other things that you wouldn't. But those people that I mentioned, for sure, Kirby Delanero, love what he's doing. And Christopher Carter, The Imagination. Because there really is these, I've kind of immersed myself in this circle with these people, and I've been invited back to a lot of the Christian conversation from these people, as I would say mystical Christianity is on a rise again now as we talk about this Renaissance. And so they reach out to people like me, which I am a Christian. My foundation is in the cross of Christ, and that's my gate, my door. So to see them welcoming me to their table has been beautiful. But I will say that there's still this really, really aggressive side of Christianity that is still us four and no more, that is looking for the differences and ready to call you out on the things that they don't agree with or believe in. And I have a lot of friends who are still in those movements, who are friends because we're Christians, and a lot of them roll the dice with me because of my different beliefs and things that I take a hard liberal stance on, as far as seeing God in everything versus only seeing God in Christianity, if you will. That's definitely not the way to go. So Martin even says Gil Hodges, Justin Abraham, Mike Parsons as well. Karina Pataki, got to say her name. Karina is amazing. She's been one who has been a good friend, and there's a lot of them, and it's becoming more and more. What is his name that kind of talks real slow? Somebody help me. I want to say his name, kind of talks slow. I had him on the podcast. Very much a thinker. Somebody say his name. You guys know who I'm talking about. Christian mystic. Wears the glasses. I know you know who I'm talking about, Martin, but there's a lot of people. So those are the Christians there. And then you get people who are outside of Christendom that are still like carrying that torch of light, love, and truth. And I have to be open to say that I think what I would call Christian in my mind from my studies and my references have nothing to do with just toting a Bible or using that language. I would say that those things, or those people that are of Christ, are people who have chosen the path of love, which is the narrow path, which is the teachings of Jesus, and have accepted that and have made it their goal to stand for truth and to stand for love, whatever that is. And that is Christ in all things and in all people. Brian Orm is who I'm thinking of, another Christian mystic. Michael Basham, Flying Penguins, is mentioning him. So these are other people who are friends, and I do believe in their work and what they're doing. So yeah, to be able to see God in everything and in everyone, and be able to see the good. And then there's those heresy hunters, as Martin says here, that have trained their eye to find the things that they don't agree with, or the things that may be negative, or may be a stumbling block, or is deceptive, So there's definitely those people who are still out there. And as I'm stepping and dancing in this realm of Christendom, I just started going back to church, and so that's hard. You know what I'm saying? With people know who you are, know what you believe in, but they still love you, they still accept you. I'm not in there trying to teach people, I'm not trying to speak, you know what I'm saying? I'm just going with my family and or my wife, and just having a beautiful experience. And that's hard, because Christians can be the first people to kill their wounded, and they see you bleeding and they smell blood and they see a chink in your armor. It's like throwing someone to the piranhas. And it definitely can be like that. And that's a lot of people's experience. And that realm still exists. I haven't been, I don't fellowship in those or move in those circles too much anymore. I've stepped away from that for a long time because it used to be me. And but I've had my name mentioned in some of those circles recently, and yeah, they're still out there, and they're still ready to get you. And but it's part of it. It's a rite of passage, man. And that's what, knowing that those people exist, make me love and honor and cherish the people who are more inclusive, more loving, who have chosen love. Or say, I know we disagree on a lot. Listen, there's only a little bit that we agree on, but let's double down on the things that we agree on. Me and Betty, we could have went at it and had all of these things we disagree on. There's a lot of stuff, but I don't care. That's out the window. We don't have time for that. We have time on the things to double down on what is beautiful, what is lovely, what is pure, what is righteous, what is of good report. Let's think on those things. I'm commanded through the scriptures as a follower of Christ and one who honors the word to do that. So I found much more peace in my life. Now, is that to turn a blind eye to deception, to people who are trying to weasel their way in with hidden agendas and hidden motives, or with false doctrine? No, I think we should definitely approach that, and we should speak on these things, but you have to do it with grace. You have to be able to do those things with grace, and you have to know yourself. And my challenge to those on both sides, for myself and for the one who has made it their point to point out heresies and the negative, because you've trained yourself without even knowing it to be able to see those things and everything. The first thing you see is the negative. You see the pitfall. You see the things that other people don't see. Try to point out the opposite. Try to see the good in something. Or if it's someone like who you're just accepting of everything, listen, let's see, there is dangerous stuff here. We got to talk about it. It's not saying that you just take everything hook, line, and sinker and not use discernment. You have to use discernment. You have to know those that labor among you. And so, pick your battles wisely, but going around demonizing and calling people out, calling them evil and putting them down, it's always what I found steeped in wanting to lift yourself up. Let's stay away from him so that you will come listen to my pastor or listen to me. And that's usually the spirit that's behind it. When people, I've been seeing a lot of people we call sneak dissing. They'll do live streams and they'll mention they'll mention what people are doing, and they'll talk about that person without saying their name, but everybody knows who they're thinking of, and they're saying, hey, I'm not talking about you. I never mentioned you, man. And it's like, come on, like you're watching my page, you're watching what I'm doing, and you're talking about it on your live stream and warning your followers to stay away from me. I'm not talking about me, but I have other friends in the Christian realm, in the Christian movement, that's happening to. And I find it distasteful. There's no need to sneak this. If you believe it, speak it, call their name out. If there's a time and a reason to do that, there's people I don't like. There's people that I think are a threat. And although I may not go on a rampage and really call them out or make it a campaign or do videos on those things, which you guys would click because it would be clickbait. Stay away from so-and-so. 7 things wrong with this guy. You know what I'm saying? You guys, that people would eat that up. But we have chosen this middle ground, which is the narrow path. I can easily take a hard right or a hard left, and we get more followers. And that the people who take a contrarian stance, they you know, it plays to the ego of what you need to, you know, of clicks and likes, and a lot of times I've been listening to some of these people, and they're dead wrong. Like their stuff they're preaching and they're saying is super wrong. They're making stuff up, but they speak it with confidence because they yell it, or they look presentable or look the part, and then people just believe it. And people can speak things with a sense of you know, raising their voice or yelling, and it seems like they know it, or they're convinced, and they could be making stuff up. Like I've been hearing some weird stuff coming out of some of these Christian camps. But anyway, anybody has any questions, let me know. For myself, I love, you know, to open up, and you know, I get a lot of inbox and stuff, and trust me, like if you inbox me, like it's hard for me to dialogue. I don't write a whole bunch. I would rather maybe FaceTime you or call you or answer your question on air, because a lot of times people have the same questions. So if there's anything that they want to know, whether it's, you know, people want to know, especially from the Christian camp, personal beliefs, because they all have a ledge. Like, I'm with TruthSeekah until he said Kundalini. Now that lost me. My pastor told me the Kundalini is this, and blah, 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 all of this kind of stuff. So everyone has that place that they'll walk with you until. But hey, I'm an open book. I don't care. I'm not married to any of these theories or beliefs or ideas. I'm married to Christ, and because of my faith and what he's done for me. And that's my story. And even that is too far for some people. Why do you believe this primitive stuff? Like, I'm with you on the spiritual stuff, but then you believe the Christian thing, which is I don't see how you can do that. And people will be vocal about that, and make fun of you, and feel they need to comment or lash out on the things that they disagree with. It ain't just the Christians, guys. It's the New Agers. It's the indigenous followers. They have a way of lashing out as well. So it works both ways, and you got to know that. So putting people in these boxes hurts people. But that's what we do. We all do it, and we try to break out of those boxes. Phyllis says, can someone tell me what exactly is a Christian mystic? I can give you my definition, but let's just go to the definition, just so you would know. Well, I don't know if there's actually a Christian mystic definition, but the definition of a mystic, and you'll find that a mystic is a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute. That's what I would call God, or the all, consciousness, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect. So someone who believes in deep eternal truths that resonate and go far beyond what you can see, touch, taste, or really understand. And we come into notions of that through contemplation. That's a mystic. And so I guess a Christian mystic would be someone who approaches that from a Christian perspective. And this is even from a definition from Saint John of the Cross. So even that mystical definition is from a Christian. And you'll find out the more study that you do that the early Christians were all mystics, that they were all Christian mystics, and they believed in this spiritual essence, and the this oneness with Christ, or with God through Christ, is a mystical experience. Listen, these people were talking to angels that were traveling back and forth from heaven to earth through the trance state. They were leaving their body. They were doing all types of things. And where that ties in for me to be more inclusive is that we look into the Old Testament and we see a lot of different practices that they were doing. We see the prophets were laying on their side, and they were commanded to sleep on their side for a certain amount of days, and they were fasting, and they were doing these indigenous rites and practices that were really a universal initiation into the secrets, into the mysteries of heaven. And again, we mentioned that today on the podcast. Which order do I get involved with? All of us, myself included, starts looking up these orders. Are they around me? Is there an order of Rosicrucians around me? Can I be a Christian? Are they Christians? What about Masonry? There's people who are like joining Masons because they think they're going to find a camaraderie of people who are into the mysteries, and that they can study and they can be inducted into. But I tell you that we are all inducted into an ancient order, a universal order of the mysteries. And even, I like the term invisible college. We're going through school. This, when you understand that this earth, this realm is a school where you're learning, you're trying things out, you're being tested, you're remembering, and you're being quizzed. So to understand that we are all already in that school together, and it has nothing to do with a physical order or a physical representation. Now there are people who, they've given their life over to that, to studying those truths and to embody it and to teach it. And that's where you get esoteric orders and stuff from. But you'll find, just like Betty and just like myself, to find one group or one people that you want to learn under or learn from, it's hard. It's hard because when you're open and you start to learn, you start to see that everybody has a piece of it. Everybody has a piece. TruthSeekah has a piece of it. It's a little piece. It's a piece. Gil Hodges and Kingdom Talks, they have a piece. John Crowder has a piece. Manly P. Hall had a piece, huge piece. But everybody has a piece of that truth, and it's up to you to be able to see what that is, and see, what where that stands in your life, and be able to honor and acknowledge that light, that piece, even the part that you disagree with or is not for you, even to honor that, to be people of honor, men and women of honor, that we can see the good in that and honor. Namaste. The light in me bows to the light within you, man. I am another you, you are another me. We're all reflections of each other. And the things that I don't like about you are really the things that I don't like about myself, or you have a little bit too much freedom that I haven't been able to give myself because of my religious upbringing, because of the things that I believe or I agree with. So you have a lot of that going on too. So God, nature, people, everything's teaching us. We're being taught. The Holy Spirit is your teacher. It is a sacred spirit is your teacher. The word holy, let's change the name. The word holy means sacred. Let's start calling it a sacred spirit. I'm led by an ancient sacred spirit from God. It's holy. It is beautiful. It is divine. It is separate. And that radiates and speaks to all creation. And it's in all life. It is in the breath. It is the spirit. It is the very thing that animates us and gives us life. But once you become cognitive of that and conscious of that, you understand that you can honor it in all things and in all people. That's my take. That's my experience. That's where I come from. Look at some of these comments here. Phyllis says, so basically not having any limiting beliefs, be open to what God has for you. Thank you. Yep, that's exactly it. Whatever those limiting beliefs are, to be able to identify them and understand why they limit you, and maybe it's a safety mechanism. Maybe it's you've been hurt, you've been abused, you've been lied to, you've been taken advantage of, so you create these limiting beliefs, and it's to serve you. It was your ego trying to save you. So Lessa Sarah says communication with the Creator, it's in the birds and trees. Yep. Yeah, that's what the scripture says, that if you listen to the birds, if you listen to the wind, it'll teach you. The water, the spirits, the animals, like everything, all things carry that sacred breath and are part of that sacred flame. And that's what the mystics understood. It was through contemplation, it was through prayer, and it was through devotion that they went deeper into that. Martin says, my opinion, a Christian mystic is someone who is open to experiencing the universe across multiple senses, but keeps Jesus as the key foundation source. Yep, I would agree with that. Jesus is my rock and my foundation. It is my initiation, my welcome into to life, really. And so to abandon that or to leave that would be silly. And many people have, and many people do. I could never abandon that. That would be silly. But understanding and I would say also too, that I would say for the Christian mystic, is understanding that Jesus is more than is more and was more than just another person, right? It's the, whether you want, some would say deity of Jesus, or he was special. There was something different about his life, who he was before he came here. Many would say God in the flesh. Some would say anointed. I would say that the Son of God, who was the firstborn among many brethren, right? So he just wasn't a person who attained Christhood, but he was the Christ. He was the epitome of Christ consciousness. It was him. He was, there is no Christ without Jesus Christ. So there's something special about him, of who he did. He was perfect, blameless, sinless. He kept the law perfectly. And so he was different. We've all messed up. Everyone else has broken the law, but he was the spotless Lamb of God that took away the sins of the entire world. And now that revelation is deep. And how far does that go? And of the cleansing your mind of your consciousness and your conscience, cleansing your conscience so that you can stand in right standing before God, that you wouldn't have any condemnation. You wouldn't have anything that would stand in the way between you and your Creator. That's the born again experience. And so he walked that out, and he who knew no sin became sin. Jesus became sin and defeated death. So this notion of death and going into the next life, he defeated it. He took the sting of death away, of something that we had to fear, something that was inevitable. He took it away so that we could step into eternal life, is what the scripture says. And he showed us how to do that. And not to just do that when you die, but to do that here and now. To do that here and now, how to step into life more abundantly, how to get, he didn't die so that you can get into heaven. He died so he can get heaven into you. That the Holy Spirit, the teacher, would come after Christ and lead you and teach you and fellowship with you and lead you into all truth. It would be patient with you. It would be loving with you. And it would be personal with you. And that's the Holy Spirit. And that's the person of Jesus, And so this ancient, he's still here. He defeated death. They didn't just kill him. So many prophets come and they die, and he defeated death. And he proved that by his resurrection on the third day. Rose again, and he stood. They killed him. They literally stuck they crucified him on the cross, and they stuck a spear between his ribs and pierced his heart to make sure that he was dead. He died of asphyxiation on the cross. They killed him for you. He took upon the sins of mankind, that through him there would be no condemnation. So why not? Why not believe that? Why not apply that to your life in the way that you see people? In the same grace that Christ has shown us, we show other people. We've made it our duty. We've made it our life's goal to do that, to show that same grace that was shown to us to others. Yeah, but this, yeah, but that. Listen, it's the greatest story ever told. There's a reason why that book and that story is universal, but it stands the test of time. It is still here today. And many of these other traditions are gone. Yeah, it's because of Christianity and because of this, and there was a war against it. Sure. But if you can give me structure, if you can show me in any of these other religions, and so my hats are off to them. Like, if you can find God, and listen, but most of the stuff that we try to look back to, it's gone. It's lost. It died. So we still have the scriptures. We do have texts that were taken out, and we have fellowship. We have the ancient practice. You have praying. You have fasting, speaking in tongues, camaraderie, things to do, letters. And so it's just amazing to still have that, and it has stood the test of time, and it will. And even if all Bibles were destroyed and they got out of here, that story would happen again. Spirit of truth would find a way to mention you and to reach out to you and to change your life. It is the hero's journey, and it's even the heavens declare the glory of God. This story of what Jesus did was written in the stars before the foundations of the world. It was written in the stars. It was written in the cosmos. That's why the mystics or the magi were the first ones to welcome the birth of the Messiah, because they read the stars. They understood the stories that were happening in the stars. And it was a story of the Messiah who would come here and save his people from their sins. He would save his people from their oppression. And that's why I preached that, and I still believe that because I was one of those people. So Valerie says, why do people always need labels? That's why I like the song I am everything, we are everything. People ask me what I believe and I say everything. Exactly, I'm with you. They say, what do you believe, man? What necessarily do you believe? I say, my question is, about what? What do you believe? About what? About Jesus. Okay, let's get specific. You got to make people get specific, guys. Don't let them just throw a blanket statement. Or you're a New Ager. You're a Christian. What is it? What do you think a Christian is? No, I'm not that. I'm not what you just said. No, I don't believe any of that. So make people get specific when they ask you questions or they try to generalize you. So she says, people ask me what I believe and I say everything. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I just wonder why they don't. Not to practice all beliefs, but I do believe that they exist. Christ just happens to be the guide for me, and I see him in everything. Exactly. Me too. And again, with any tradition, like, listen, if it's good, if it's helping people, like, let's hang on to it. Even the Christian stuff, the stuff that, listen, has been detrimental, that has been abusive and abrasive and demonic and negative, get rid of that stuff. I don't want it. Keep it. I'm not touching your disgusting judgments. I rise above it. Listen, get rid of it. So yeah, a perfect religion would be something that would have all of the beautiful practices from every religion. But from what I've studied, you don't even have to go to every religion. You have to go to every religion to get a little bit more context on things that the Bible is saying. I'll tell you that, because the Bible doesn't specialize in breath work. The Bible doesn't specialize in the trance state. They talk about people who practice the trance state. And because of their practices, this happened. People who fasted. That doesn't tell you how to fast. It doesn't tell you different types of fast. Now, through reading, we get some ideas, but you have to go talk to a people who have given their life over to fasting. There's different types. There's different things. And so the Bible doesn't specialize in any of that. But I will say that the Bible mentions almost everything in some shape or form. When it comes to the mystical path, the Bible stands the test of time, and it is full of all of these things. Lesasara says separation is a lie. I think the Bible is full of ideas about oneness, because separation is a lie. The Bible is full about ideas of spiritual ecstasy, and again, the trance state, leaving your body, communing with angels, ridding yourselves of demons, and even what happens to a demon when it leaves your body or leaves your psyche. And so they're so beautiful and so ancient at the same time. So you don't have to go out to know that those things are in the Bible, but to go deeper, you really do have to venture out, because you're gonna get these people who were tapped into their God given giftings and abilities. They prophesying, speaking in tongues, words of knowledge, words of wisdom, being able to see in the spirit, hear in the spirit, smell in the spirit, like so many different things. And the Bible really doesn't teach you much. Now, it does give you some etiquette, but there are no practices and try this and do this and here's how you get sharper. The Bible does say that the spirit of the prophet is subject unto the prophet. So you got to get with a prophet or somebody who is operating in those giftings to teach you. And how you learn, not even by reading, but by doing. You learn by doing. And we, for many people, that's few and far between. So you may have to look into something else. The beautiful thing I will say is that there are a lot of Christians who still hold on to that foundation in Christ, who have done the journeys, who have gone here and went there, and they can come back with some experiences or some expressions and really some how-tos on a lot of this stuff that are not biblical. Got to tell you, most of them are not. They may have been mentioned somewhat a little bit here, but it was done through something that the Spirit showed them, or they learned from Eastern mysticism or a mystery school or whatever. That's just what it is. And everything else is just kind of reading into it. But even for you, just I would say for the Christian who begins to look out, just guard your faith, man. Guard your heart. That it is. The Bible says it is impossible for those who have been touched and illuminated with that light of Christ, who have had that experience, to even abandon that. I have never abandoned it. For me, it gets bigger and it's more inclusive. It means more to me now, and I can see it in more things than just here. So the Christian walk is the mystical walk for sure. And I think that even calling myself a Christian mystic, it just opens up for the things that you don't like or you don't agree with as me being a Christian. Well, maybe that's the mystic side of me. I didn't tell you I was a Christian. I'm a Christian mystic. It's a little bit different. We believe in some other things. We're more open and we see God in more things than just this or that. So there's a lot of stuff in there. It's the most magical book on the planet. The most powerful book that ever existed is the scriptures. I'll tell you that. God will speak to your heart through it, for sure. Teaching, training, exhortation, rebuke, all of that in there. And that's where it gets in, where the Spirit is teaching you. Again, you need not any man to teach you. The Spirit will teach you. And those lessons and those things change over time. They get more deeper, they get more involved. You begin to study and learn more. Life experience, you learn more. I learned, not to gossip, not by reading it in scripture saying don't do it. You think it'd be that easy. But I learned about not gossiping by having people gossip about me. Oh, and see how that feels. And being in, like even the other day I was and I was just reminded, because we have some neighbors who did a Bible study, and I go over there from time to time, and they do a Bible study. And I was over there last week, and this one guy, and God bless his heart, but he was saying he was on the job site and he met a flat earther who was just telling him all this stuff. The earth is flat, you've been lied to, and telling him this and that and this and that. And he believes this, man. Can you believe that he believes this? Can you believe that guy said that, man, the stars aren't real, man? And he just kept going on. I was just kind of sitting there. And I was like, yeah, I interview those people. I know. So I have a grace for them. But then after a moment hit me, it's like, hey, man, that's how Christians talk about you, Derek. Like those conversations at the table of people laughing and mentioning you, and TruthSeekah posted this, and early on that that affected me, and but now it's just, I know it comes with the territory and stuff, and I see why. Like people who don't understand, and you have to laugh and stuff. But it was just a moment of epiphany. Like, yeah, these people were doing that to you. Like, so you don't join in on the scoffing and ridicule about that guy either, Yeah, man, flat earthers are weird, dude. I interview them on my podcast. They're crazy, man. Blah, 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 blah. Nope. I just like, yep. It was sobering. Okay, this is what's happened about you. Like I'm in a a conversation where they could have been talking about me or my podcast or my guest, and so it is what it is. So. There's a couple things that Jesus warns about that are he even talks about you're in danger of hellfire. I'm not thinking that he means eternal damnation and you burn in hell for all eternity, but I think that here you're bringing this fire, you're bringing this condemnation upon yourself when you operate in these sins. And one of the big things that he didn't play with was gossip and backbiting, and Jesus was big on that, to be careful, man. Why? Because your words carry weight. Your words are magic. You're speaking blessings and curses out of the same mouth. So when it comes to scoffing and backbiting and gossip, be careful, because you will give an account on every idle word that comes out of your mouth. I don't think, well, maybe in the great white throne of judgment on the other side, whatever, maybe you do a life review there, but I'm talking about here, today. As you speak those things and they begin to come back to you. Have you ever gossiped or said anything about somebody and you didn't want them to know? And that person says, hey man, so-and-so told me that you said this about me. It's like, dang, I didn't think they was going to tell you. Oh my God, like how'd you? And you're confronted with that. Yeah, you're going to give an account for every idle word that you've said in this life, because what you put out comes back to you. You are creating. When you speak, abracadabra, I bless what I speak. Everything that I say, I'm creating. So let's create a beautiful life. Let's create beautiful timelines and bring into our existence. So, man, I hope that blesses you guys. I enjoyed hanging out. Nobody has any more questions, I'll go ahead and end this stream. Really good talk, man. I really enjoyed speaking with Betty, and it was really good. So make sure you guys check out her work for sure. I will say, if you guys aren't patrons, if you're not supporting, you're missing out, because there's a whole bunch of really cool stuff there. Listen, all the new music that I'm working on for White Magic is there. Where am I at on the album? I am waiting for a couple collabs. There's a couple features that I have out that I'm waiting to get back. I wanted to get some other names and some other flavor on the album, so I've been waiting patiently from some of these people, months even. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully within the next couple of days. I just heard back from Illuminati Congo, who's doing a couple songs with me, that he's finished his, and he just gotta bounce them down, export them, and get them to me. So he'll be on the album, and that's what I'm waiting on. I'm waiting on these features. But the stuff that is already done, it's over on the Patreon. The Thursday night School of the Mystics, the hangouts, the prayer sessions that we do, the meditation, which is the community aspect to what we're building here. Discord privileges. You get access to a lot. A little goes a long way. I will say that. A little goes a long way. So thank you guys for believing in my work and all the support. It really means the world. So with that, I'm going to say peace and shalom, man. Thank you guys for hanging out. See all your beautiful comments, and we'll do this again Thursday, guys. Peace and blessings. Thanks so much.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.